Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can share their own unique spiritual journey stories. If you have a story to tell, email lighttalk423@gmail.com. While you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons. All right, let's get started. We have a fabulous guest again today, so we're going to get it started, and I'll hand the mic over to her. Go for it.
Thank you, Dana. Well, my name's Phyllis Okon, but I go by Lady Phyllis. My kids kind of picked that name out for me. And about, well, it was 6 years ago, my husband passed away. Now, I had always gone to mediums. We worked together, my husband and I were together for 48 years. And when I lost my parents, I was constantly going to mediums. I like going to mediums. I like the messages I receive. I feel it's a way that, I get their messages. And when he passed away, I was going like a lot. I was going to lots and lots of different mediums. And it happened consecutively. Many mediums said to me, "You could do this yourself. Your husband said he's going to help you." And the last one said to me, "I'm going to teach you." So that was in 2019. So in 2019, November 2019, he started to give me lessons through FaceTime. There was no Zoom then. So I was learning through FaceTime. And then, of course, March 2020, the world kind of fell apart and we found ourselves in lockdown and we weren't going places. My day job was, I was working through the Zoom. And so I had a lot of free time in the evenings. So I started taking courses with lots of different teachers. There were a whole bunch of mediumship courses available online. And I took course after course after course. And what I found, a lot of the teachers were really good, but nobody actually gives you practical information. It's all about how they did it, how, what works for them. But I didn't get a sense of practicality out of it. But in any case, I really studied hard and I compared everything I learned. And when I finished my mentorship with Thomas John, out of the 86 people in that mentorship class, he only endorsed me. I was the only student to be endorsed. And what happened, my kids had a podcast. They invited me on their podcast. They would interview mediums. I didn't know they were going to do it. They brought people on. They said, "Okay, Mom, go ahead and read them." So as soon as I read them, they set me up with a website. They figured out I was going to be called Lady Phyllis. They picked the color scheme, and that was it. And they got me a phone number, and I started booking jobs pretty much right away. So that was close to 3 years ago. I started doing readings, and I do between 30 and 40 readings per month. I hold galleries. And then what happened was a lot of people kept saying to me, because I'm not gifted. When they say thank you for you, I'm not gifted. I learned how to do this. I'm a gifted medium, meaning I learned how to translate what I was hearing, and feeling, but I don't feel special. I'm not anything beyond anybody else. Anybody could do this. And so they all said, "Well, could you teach us?" So I started teaching. And currently, this month, I have 3 classes going on. And I wrote 2 books. I wrote a book of affirmations that I use during my readings, and that's pretty much it. I'm also the author of 83 books under the name Carol P. Roman and Britt London. I write children's books. That's one of my, I don't want to call it a hobby, but it's one of my activities. I tried to turn it into a business, but it's um, it's an interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've never written a book or anything, but it sounds kind of cool though. I mean, to be able
Well,
to write.
anybody can write, and everybody's got a story, and with KDP it makes it very easy to publish. So I did teach a course. I did a seminar on how to write, market, how to write, publish, and market your own book. I did that, I don't know, it was about a month ago, and I had a pretty good turnout. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. That's great that you're able to do that and it all comes about and works for you. And that's awesome. That is awesome.
Well, my kids call me the mother of reinvention, so I guess I have to keep reinventing myself. That's what I do. And all that I do it without losing my day job. I still have a day job. So you'd be surprised at what you could fit into a day.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's getting there. I got a full-time job and doing this, so there we
It's a lot.
go.
It's a lot. You have to edit it. You have to put in whatever music or whatever it is. It's people don't realize that you just turn on the podcast. You have to market it. There's a lot that you have to do to make it work.
Right, right. I found that out.
Well, I give you a lot of credit. That's one thing I'm not really good at my social media. I mean, I take care of my social media, but I did have a podcast. I had a podcast for about 2 years. It was just a lot of work finding guests and interviewing them, doing your research on them. It took up a lot of time. I
Yeah.
also produced a magazine for a while. It was also a lot of work.
Yeah, it is a lot of work, but I'd rather do this than my day job. So, I mean, this has just been so much fun. I love talking with everybody, and it's just blast.
Well,
So fun.
if you meet
I'm great.
interesting people and you're leaving your
Mhm.
mark on the world. I mean, I think that's the best part. That's what I felt when I was writing books, that I was leaving a legacy behind. And with the mediumship, knowing that I've had close to 80 students already, that they're moving on and either they're doing it for friends or family or they've turned it into a business. It's really exciting to know. My one of my sons is in my class and he's reading people at this point. So it's nice to know that I'm creating another legacy, that what I'm doing is helping somebody else. The old adage, the old if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. So it's a great thing that they can turn it into a living, or they could just enjoy the fact that they're able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned that you have the what three Claires that you work with? Yeah, Claire sentient and Claire voyant and Claire audient. I think I remember you saying, right?
I work with Claire Gustians, Claire Senti. I work with all of the
Okay.
Claires. It's like you're getting messages all the time. You're getting these Claires all the time. It's you just don't we live such a fast-paced life that we don't even realize that we're getting these downloads or these feelings. You walk into a room and you smell grandma's perfume. But it's always just for an instant. It doesn't linger. It's very quick. Or you smell cigar smoke, grandpa's pipe smoke, whatever. It's like you're getting that, but you just go, oh, what was that? And you forget about it. We don't hold on to those things. So the only Claire I don't do is telekinetic. Like I don't I if I touch an object, I'm not a touchy feely person. So that one, but I have clear empathy. I think a lot of people have clear empathy when they walk into a room, a party. They'll look at the room and they know where they want to walk, is going to make them feel welcome. That's clear cognizant. You're having a conversation with somebody and you just know something about them and you don't know how you know it. Or clear sentient, you have a feeling not to bring something up that, I think we all have clairs. We just don't identify them as anything more than our intuition or, just our gut feeling. Well, maybe there's something more than that. Maybe they're coming from another place,
Yeah,
or they come
yeah.
from deeper inside of us.
Very true. Very true. So, what kind of experiences have you had with your Claires?
Well, I think Claire Audient, the first time I was in a car, and usually my husband drove, and so I met my friends. I had my friend of many, many years. She lives on the other side of Long Island, and I met her on her half, and it was dark when I came out, and this was in the early days of my widowhood, and I didn't charge my phone. I didn't have, the thing to charge it, and my phone ran out of battery, and I didn't have Waze. I couldn't call my kids and I was lost. I didn't know that my husband did the bulk of the driving. I never paid attention. And I really got scared because I didn't know where to go. It was pitch black. I was in a neighborhood I wasn't familiar with. There were no stores, there were no gas. I was just really terrified. And all of a sudden I heard um, a voice. It wasn't my husband's voice, but I recognized the language patterns as being my husband's language patterns. He could curse like a sailor. And I recognized that, and I heard him tell me not to panic, to breathe, and to make a right, and then make a left, and then make another left. And he guided me to the highway. And once I was on the highway, I was fine. But there was no way I could have known how to go. I was complete, and I can't tell my right from my left. I have certain cognitive deficits that, I can't tell directions. I'm that person that will say, make a right, and then person's making right, and I go, no, 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 the other right. I just don't, I can't do that, you
Yeah.
know. So it was that was the first experience, and I realized um, that I probably was hearing things that I wasn't paying attention because it didn't come in my mother's voice. But how many times you hear something in your head and you go, "Oh, that's something my dad would have told me." Well, maybe it is. Maybe he is talking. It's the voice in our head. So if you take this word and you read it out loud.
Mediumship.
Now read it inside your head. You heard it in your head. It's not the same
Hmm.
voice as yours. It's different.
Mm-mm.
It sounds different, but
Hmm.
that's you have to listen for.
Yeah.
So that's hearing it
Okay.
with your mind's ear, just like seeing something with your mind's eye. Like I'll say to people, I see spirit if they're behind you, it's parents or grandparents. If they're to the side of you, it's a contemporary. God forbid they're in front of you, it's a child. That's how I see spirit. But I don't actually see spirit. It's more of I see them in my mind's eye. I
Yeah.
see
Or
disturb.
annoying.
No, they're not annoying. Not at
It's
all.
not, no, I mean, it would, it's not like, it's not a clear knowing.
Oh, clear knowing, right? Yeah.
Knowing. Yeah. Um,
Oh, that's clear
so,
cognitive. You know,
right. Clear cognitive. So, I forgot my question there, but, so you have that difference. How would you know the difference of clear cognitive or something you just kind of know that's being said in your head in your own ego?
well, that's how you have to learn. You have to learn the difference. My son says that it's kind of like you see everything like you would on TV, and then you get high def. And when he gets the high def image, he knows that's coming from spirit. For me, it's quick. When I see or hear something and it's quick, it's instantaneous, I know that that's, for instance, you talk about claircognizant. I was in an airport. My parents had gone on ahead, and this was 25 years ago. It was 2020. No, 20, it was 2000. It was 2000. And my parents, we had just gotten off a flight from Vegas. We were on vacation with the kids, and my sons were getting an autograph. And all of a sudden, I felt panic, and I started to run. And my son said, "What are you doing?" And I opened the door, and I just saw like an empty. It was black. It was pitch black. And I said, "Oh my God, my father just died." And my son got angry at me, and he said, "You're always saying those. Why are you saying those things?" And I was running, and he was screaming at me to slow down. And when I got to the gate, the driver was there, and he said, "Something happened to your father. He just collapsed." And my father indeed had just died. So that's a feeling of claircognizance, that clair I can't explain, but I knew something happened, and I felt that urgency, and I was running to get to my dad. As soon as I got on my knees, I knew that he had left, you know. But it's just a knowing. It's like
Yeah.
I know I'm going to fail a test tomorrow, and then you fail it. Or I just know someone's going to call, and they do. Or you see someone, and you go, I just know they don't like me. I don't know. It's nothing that I'm doing wrong, but I just know I can feel it. I know it. So it's a combination of cognizance and sentience.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm learning in my class right now is like what you said is exactly what my teacher said is it's your mind's ear
Right.
is what
Right.
she said too, and it's like that's I like that. I like that.
It's your inner ear. And you have to distinguish, and only by practice do you distinguish what's your imagination. If it's a long, drawn out story, it's your imagination. If it's quick, that's spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what she's saying too.
Hmm.
Yeah. So do you had mentioned that you had this feeling and saw a plane crash into a building?
Yeah, I did. It was the week before 9/11. I I was driving over the Throgs Neck Bridge with my husband, And I said, plane's going to hit the building. And he said, you're nuts. Like that was always the reaction. But I didn't picture a big jet. I pictured a small plane. I just knew it that it was going to happen. I saw it in my mind's eye, but I saw a small plane hitting the building. And then that Tuesday, we were driving in. My son was in the car in front of us and started screaming. A plane hit the building. And I figured it was a small plane till we rounded by Shea Stadium and I saw the smoke and we saw the second, you could, I mean, I didn't see the plane, but I saw the explosion when the second plane hit the building.
Hmm.
That was terrible.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Mhm.
Ooh, that's kind of deep right there. Mm,
Yeah, well, my younger son and I have a pact that if I see things, I'll often call him and he writes them down because I forget things. As soon as I see it, I usually forget it. So if I sense something or if I see something, I'll tell him, like, I think there's going to be an earthquake or whatever. And he writes it down with the date. And then when something happens, he checks his diary and he finds it. I don't hold on to things.
yeah. Wow. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But really cool. I mean, yeah, I would not want to be right there with towers going down for sure.
But I was
Yeah.
outside when they went down. We got to our office in Queens, and we saw the towers. It was just It was horrible. It was a terrible, terrible day.
Yeah. Mm. I have my husband's cousin was working nearby and she felt it, the two hit when they hit. It was crazy. Crazy. Mm. So you had a celebration of life in Utah. You
I
want to
did.
tell about that? Um,
I don't think so. I had,
Celebration of life.
yeah, they just made a big surprise party for me. It was the first time ever. But that was the end of September. And my whole family surprised me, and I had a bunch of friends fly in. And that was a big surprise. I turned 70 this year. So,
Oh,
yeah, the kids
yeah.
surprised. Yeah. And it was funny because I usually know what's going on with all of them, and I didn't have a clue. I was totally tuned out. So they really surprised me.
Yeah, they kept it from you even from spirit, huh?
Yeah, they did.
Good for
They did.
them.
Well, oddly enough, yeah, I'm always early, and my daughter-in-laws were very nervous that I was going to show up early at the venue because I'm always early. And
Mhm.
we were having a family dinner, I thought. And I got a flat tire. And my husband's car, which I still have, didn't start. So my kids attributed that to spirit, that
Mhm.
that I got a flat the night before and I didn't realize coming from a restaurant and his car, the battery was dead. So it was really interesting. So they felt that my husband took part in the festivities. He got to,
That sounds perfect.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, and you had a honoring your father at his funeral.
Yeah, well, we I got up and spoke. It was the first time that I'd ever done that at a funeral. My father passed away on, I think it was a Tuesday, and we buried him on a Wednesday, so it was relatively quick.
Mm.
So, was we what we did do, you may be confusing it. We had the hospital when my husband passed. Um, we had a celebration about 6 months after he died. People, instead of you know, sending platters of food or whatever, chipped in and we bought benches for the nurses because they took such good care of him. We wanted to honor the nurses. So my kids bought one bench and we used the money for the other bench. And there's a garden now outside of the hospital that's dedicated to my husband's memory. So that might be, what you're talking about. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's really sweet. That's awesome for you. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, how about telling us about some of your tools in your toolbox for reading cards?
okay, I do reading. I teach one class on tarot just because anybody who's going to do this should understand about tarot. And for the whole summer I was learning, I worked with tarot and with dowsing rods because I needed to you talked about your ego. We're all afraid of getting the wrong answer. So I used them for the entire summer to check my answers. And I kept getting answers that matched what I was saying. So that kind of built my confidence. But I generally don't use cards in a reading, but I do use my book. And so what I do, I wrote the book. A friend of mine had asked me to write a book on affirmations. And I said, "What are affirmations?" So she sent me a few. And I said, "Oh, I know those." So I wrote the book on a Saturday. I had it formatted the next week and I published it. And what ended up happening is very often I will ask a sitter to pick a page. And when they pick a page, I read them what's on that page. And very often it resonates with whoever's on the other side. It could be a parent telling them to take it easy and reflect. It could be a spouse telling them that they love them, whatever it is, whatever I read. And then I'll do Facebook
Wow.
Lives and I ask people just to write a number and I read what's on that number and they say it resonates. But,
Wow. That's really cool. That's a completely different way that I've ever heard about any kind of reading. That's really cool. Great
right,
job.
well, anything can work. You look for signs. If you're in the car and you get in and you're missing that certain someone and a song comes on and that song describes your feelings for that person or something about them, it could be a message. It's about connecting the dots, but you have to believe. You have to have faith.
Mhm.
If you don't, it's a coincidence. If you believe, it's a synchronicity. It's as simple as that. And I respect the people who don't believe. I
Right.
understand that they don't. I'm not here to convince anyone that this exists. It exists for me.
Right.
And if someone's interested, I'm willing to teach it to them. I'm willing to read them. I'm willing to work with them. But if they're not, I don't want to engage in I don't want to engage in a conversation of I'm right and you're wrong because I don't know the answer to that. I have my own, listen, there are times my son and I often laugh about it when I get something that's so specific to that person. I get a piece of information that's so specific. We kind of can't believe it either. It's like it's astonishing, and
Yeah.
but we really aren't going to know the truth until we cross over.
Right. Right.
Really not going to know. It's like I know there's oxygen around me because I'm here breathing, but I don't see it, you know?
Right. Right. Exactly. And it's like, how do you can't prove it. You can't,
The only thing I
yeah,
can provide is
exactly.
evidence where they say, how could you have known that? And I don't, whatever I see, if I see something, I present it to the person. Or if my eyes are drawn to something, like I'll be reading a person and I'll say, "Your mom is taking me to your earrings and I don't know why." And she'll go, "Oh, I'm wearing her earrings." Or I'll say, "I see a tattoo over here and your husband wants me to mention that tattoo." And that happens to be a memorial tattoo. It's not, some people, some things are specific, but they're
Mhm.
working with my memory and we all have different lives. So if I don't have something that they can relate to, they're not, I'm only, I mean, I do readings for people all over the world from different cultures. And certainly their life's experiences are different than mine. So there has to be kind of a meeting where spirit's using something. I may say squirrel and it's a chipmunk that got into the house. Okay,
Yeah.
is it exact? It's not an exact science because I don't have a reference for a chipmunk. I have references for squirrels.
Yeah. And they're kind of the same. So, yeah,
Oh, they rodent.
definitely.
Little
Yeah,
little
exactly.
For instance, my daughter-in-law was looking for a message from her father. And she asked me, "Does he have anything?" And I told her I saw a squirrel in my mind's eye. So the
Hmm.
next night she calls me up and she says, "You're not going to believe this, but I have squirrels in my attic." So is that a coincidence or was it? So I was doing a reading and I saw the same squirrel. And I said to the woman, "I don't know why, but your husband showed me a squirrel." And she goes, "Well, that was his nickname." So squirrel means different things to different people.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's really, I think it's fascinating how that relates like that in that sense, where even though you have like a squirrel in your head and you're thinking of something absolutely
Right.
different, and this other person's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's way off the wall for you. I,
Well, that's one of the things we teach. I put up pictures like an apple, and then I go through everybody in the class and I say, what does an apple mean to you? So for some people, it's school. For some people, it's health. For
Mhm,
some people, it's a teacher, whatever it is, but it means something different. So the first thing you have to say is what you see. So if I say to a person, I see an apple, does an apple mean anything to you? Well, maybe that person is buried under an apple tree, or maybe they had an apple
mhm,
fall on their head, or maybe they're a teacher and they say, well, my dad was a teacher. So it's all relative. So a skeptic would say that's reaching, and I respect that, but
mhm,
it's really between the sitter and I. And if the sitter is willing to accept that as proof that their loved one is nearby and brings them comfort and closure, I don't see mediumship as entertainment or one trick. I have to put down that it's for entertainment purposes on my website because that's what you have to say. But I don't see it as a way for, it's not a party trick. It's not what is mediumship? And that's the first lesson in my class. What is mediumship supposed to do? Mediumship's role is to bring comfort, closure, and healing. It's
mhm.
not to make a person question. It's not to make them. It's supposed to. It's supposed to find what spirit needs to say to that person to give them peace of mind.
Yeah. And it's amazing how that works, you know, like we say, it's how, I mean, you could have brought in like a grape or something
Right.
instead of an apple. I mean, you could have brought in anything,
That's right. I was doing a
but it
reading for
was an apple.
I was doing a reading for a woman. This one really meant a lot to me. I was doing a reading and I picked up that her spouse had died. She was a young girl. So it was kind of like it was and I said he was, I felt that he had been ill. And I asked him to take me to the last day. And I said, you were with him at the end. And I said, and he's talking about that you'd said something to him. Now, then your cognitive mind takes over and says, "Did you say let go?" And she says, "I said something," and she left it like that. But I knew that I didn't finish with this, and then all of a sudden, Spirit took me to my mother's last breath. And I saw my mother's breath shudder out of her. I was at the foot of the bed and I saw my mother. I saw her last breath. I held her foot as she took her last breath. And I knew the feeling of that. And I felt my
Mhm.
breath kind of swoosh through my whole body. I felt it shudder out of me too. And I said to her,
Yeah.
he's taking me to his last breath. And he says that this you'll understand that when I talk about his last breath. And she started to cry, and it was the first time she started to cry. And she said,
Mhm.
I did say to her that I felt she was I said, you climbed into the bed and you whispered something to him. And she said, yes, but I didn't know what she whispered. And then I talked to her about this last breath. And she said she was holding him and she felt him stop breathing. And I'm going to get verklempt over this. And she said to him, please take one more breath for me. And he shuddered a last breath, and that was the end. Now, why I've done a thousand readings, I've never talked about that last breath to anyone, not my mother's. And certainly to me, that was irrefutable proof. I mean, all it was a breath for me, but for her,
Yeah.
it was her last moments with her husband.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was what she said to him when I said you said something to he's talking about what you said to him, but I had no frame of reference for it. So he made
Hmm.
sure I understood by taking the breath out of my body and making me feel like this whoosh. And it was a very satisfying reading for her because she knew that he knew that she was
Yeah.
holding him.
Yeah. That's just so amazing.
Yeah,
What a love story, huh?
it is. It is. There's a
It's
lot of
quite a
love.
love. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
I,
lot of, and a lot of people need to hear, thank you for letting me go. Or,
mhm.
or, you didn't make it on time. Stop beating yourself up over it. Dying is private. And I want you to remember me for the years before, not the last 5 minutes of my life. Sometimes people need to hear that
Yeah.
because they carry that around with them. And
Yeah.
and the ones who have passed don't want us to carry around that guilt or those kind of feelings, or I forgive you, or forgive me.
Yeah.
But very often, I just had a reading 2 weeks ago where I said, your mom is saying that she wasn't there for you, that she wasn't there for you, and she's asking you to understand that there was mental illness or whatever the situation was, and it wasn't you. It wasn't about you. It was all about her. And it brought her relief, and she said, I forgive my mom. And maybe that was what she had to do to move on.
To move on. Yeah. Yeah. It makes all the sense. It
Right.
makes you understand. Once you get it, it's like it's so understanding. Like it may sound mean or rude or disrespectful or what, but I haven't even cried since my mom passed away over a year and a half ago. And it feels very weird. But at the same time, I know she's here with me. I know it's all good.
Well,
You
everybody
know?
grieves a different way.
Yeah.
We all grieve differently, and maybe by not crying, you're showing a strength. Maybe by not crying, it doesn't, the crying sometimes, well, sometimes we feel better from it. Certainly, there are times when we feel worse. When my husband was dying, I cried 2 weeks before because I knew that it was game over. I knew that it was a matter of weeks. And I got hysterical and I cried alone. And then I never cried again because I mourned him in that moment. And it was ugly crying. And I did it in the privacy of my bedroom
Mhm.
because I didn't want my kids to see me crying like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been really weird, but I know she's with me. I know she's here. I know she's watching my dad right now, and I know she's doing everything she can to be with us all. So it's really
Sure,
cool. Really cool.
sure.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show with us today. And it's amazing to hear about all this stuff. And I'm so glad that you were able to let us know how the clairs work and how you hear it and see it and know it.
It was nice meeting you, Dana.
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. I thank you so much for being with us.
Take
All
care.
right. Uh, Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. And if you have any stories you would like to share, email lighttalk423@gmail.com. And while you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.